Hi, this is Summer with Summer's Tips and Stitches, and this is just a little bit of informational, kind of a tutorial, but not really. And what I'm showing is that I knit these hats in the round, and I've started using more than one color. Now, believe it or not, you can't really tell that well in this hat, but I did a solid purple strand with a glittered purple strand, which I think really helped make the hat look less busy. But what I'm showing you in this video is that the technique that I use, to use the two different colors. Now this hat, I didn't use it, and you can see every once in a while I'll have these spaces where I have these weird holes, or you can sort of see where the stitches are kind of loose and out of sort. When I was having that problem in Alaska, actually my stepmom had found a video because she was doing the same thing. She was knitting with two strands, and she found a video tutorial that gave her a really good tip on how to knit with two strands and not have that weird lumpy seam. And so this is where I'm trying to double check. Yep. I'm trying to find the place where I joined, because I'm knitting in the round, but I am using two different colors. I'm switching between. And there is a technique you can use, which I'm about to show you. Because I had mentioned that I'm using this new technique, and a few people are like, Summer, why are you joining it? Why don't you just knit in the round? So I'm going to show you. This is where I can feel it, where I've been switching between the two colors. And as you can see right here, there are no weird little gaps or holes, because this technique is so cool. Okay, so now I'm going to show it to you. Here we go. I'm using the two colors. I'm using actually Red Heart Super Saver White, and then I love this yarn, or I love this yarn yellow. And what this technique tells us to do, which is pretty cool, I'm about to shake you around and show you. I have a crossover because I carried this downstairs. Let me get everything situated and shake the camera. It's like an earthquake, you guys. Okay, hopefully we're now in the right. Are we mixed up even worse? We are. Let me pause this and get it situated. I'm completely untangled now. So what I'm going to show you is I'm currently knitting the yellows with the whites, switching, just finished my white row. This is how you avoid that weird gappy when you're using multiple colors and knitting in the round. You take the color you just finished, pull it up to the front, and then the color you're going to be knitting with, put in the back. Yeah, it's so amazing. It's so simple. Plus it does help keep your yarn separate. I used to just leave the previous way that I was knitting, is I would just have both these yarns in the back, hanging in the back, right back here, and I would move on to start knitting and just move to the new color. But it left this weird kind of seam or this gap. So that video that my stepmom had watched told us to move the color you're not working with to the front of the stitch and then start working with your second color. Now the first stitch, I like to do two, and then I like to come over here and give this a little tug, give this a little tug, make sure everybody's nice and adjusted and not loose. And then you just continue on with the other color. Then when you get all the way around, which I'm not going to do right here for you guys, when you come back around and you're back here, you put the white in the back and you put the yellow in the front. It's so amazing how nice this area looks now. You can almost not tell at all where the seam is. I mean, you can see here where I started with the white because I have a yellow base and I started with the white. But look at that. There's no gaps. It's all perfectly normal. How nice. So that is a really nice technique for knitting with multiple colors. Now, the reasons you'd knit with multiple colors is like number one, if you're doing this where you're doing stripes. But the reason my stepmom was doing it is she had bought some, I think like 5 or 6 skeins of hand-dyed yarn. And when you're having hand-dyed yarn, sometimes the colors aren't perfectly matched. And so they suggest that while you're knitting, you use 2 different strands. So they would look kind of like the same color, but sometimes when you knit with them and you just switch to a new skein, you can kind of see a slight color variation. So to avoid that, you knit with 2 strands, one from one skein of your yarn and the other from the second skein. And that way it blends them together. It's pretty cool. And she was noticing that she too had that weird little gap, a weird little, the stitches are just a little bit loose. But when you practice this strategy of moving one of your strands forward to come out the front of your work, it's perfectly normal. It's gone. That weird little gap and loose stitch isn't there anymore. So that's what I'm showing you. So yep, I do knit my hats in a round. I kept calling it a seam, so many people thought that I was knitting a flat hat and seaming it up. But what I was talking about was where I switch from one color to the other. And so this new technique is pretty amazing, and I've been making a lot of hats. Like I said, this one, you can't really tell until you get real close that I was using 2 different strands. And then I did a packer hat, and this one I went striped all the way to the top. And then the second striped hat I started with the base being one color, did some striping, and then I stopped so that the top of the hat was solid. And then I'm going to make another one just like this, but it's going to be the opposite. It's going to be white with blue. So yeah, while I'm out in Maryland, I'm going to be making a lot of striped hats. And I know I feel like I say this all the time, but I always have someone who's new or surprised. I have 21 kids in my class this year, so by Christmas I like to have probably 23 or 24 hats, and then each of them get a hat for Christmas, and I let them choose the hat they want. That's why I like to have extras, because I don't like that one kid to get stuck with the last hat. I want everybody to still get a choice. And then usually I put the other hat in the bin for people who forget, because when you teach second graders, a lot of times they forget their snow gears. And so I have an extra hook at the end of the cubby haul where I have extra hats, extra snow pants, mittens that I've actually crocheted myself, and boots for the poor folks that forget their gear. Yeah, so try this new technique out if you're knitting. Yeah, it's worked out really well, and I'm really happy that Tammy had found it, because I've been knitting hats like crazy for my second graders, and I really love this strategy. I have one more other hat. This one I used like a mauve, and then this was a variegated yarn from Hobby Lobby. And again, I used that strategy where I pulled it forward and back. Oh no, actually, look at this, you guys. I didn't know that when I made that hat. And you see how, oh, there's another hole. When I was making this hat, I did not have that strategy. And you can see how these stitches are a little loose. They're a little lumpy. They sometimes have these little gaps. And yeah, I'm glad I looked for that. I mean, it's not terrible when you look at it. The hat, you can barely see. It's not like the kids are going to pull this hat out and spread the stitches and be like, oh, Mrs. B, how dare you give me this hat? But, you know, when you're taking pride in your work and you're trying to do your best and you want to give something to someone, it's nice to have that situated. So, yeah, look at that. This hat has kind of that weird look. And this new way that I'm doing it, there's none of that. It's perfectly seamed. I got this stitch marker from Mary's Chit Chat in Ireland, and I like to use it as my beginning of a round marker. Okay, you all, that's about 8 to 10 minutes of jibber jabber about how to move your yarn back and forth when knitting with multiple colors. Thanks for watching and subscribing. Thanks for liking and sharing my videos. And until the next video, happy crafting. Bye.